It was the first Sunday of the month, Thanksgiving Sunday. The church felt lively and full of excitement. Rich families showed up with sweet perfumes, fancy suits, and long car convoys. But one woman came in a different way, Mama Edith. She was new in town, an old, tired widow with wrinkles but eyes full of hope. She just buried her husband last month after caring for him for years. With the little she had, she chose to thank God for giving her strength through it all. She tied her only black wrapper neatly around her slim waist. Her blouse had holes, but she still ironed it with care. She held 2 small dry yams in her hands as her Thanksgiving gift. She got to the church early, even before the choir arrived. But when she tried to sit in front, the usher stopped her. "Mama, you can't sit here, but I came early," she said in a calm voice. "The priest said, we must follow orders. Please go and sit at the back." She quietly sighed and slowly walked to the back row. She didn't argue at all. She only smiled a little and hummed aside worship songs softly. When it was time to give thanks, rich families were called first. They came with baskets of fruit, cash, goats, and even sound systems. The priest smiled widely and danced with them, praying over them. Then someone softly called out Mama Edith's name. A small old woman came forward. Everyone stared at her. The dry yams in her hands shook gently as she walked to the altar. Father Innocent paused, frozen in place. His smile disappeared from his face. "What is this?" he asked loudly, pointing at her yams. "Are you here to thank God or to poison him?" The whole church burst into laughter. "This woman must be a witch," he shouted angrily. "2 dry yams? Is this a sacrifice or a joke?" Mama Edith stayed quiet. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were full of tears. "Get out of here!" Father Innocent screamed out loud. "Take your poison away from here!" The laughter echoed as she turned and slowly walked out. Her head was bent low. Even the ushers laughed at her. No one went to help her. No one stood up for her. Outside the church, Mama Edith knelt down. "Oh God," she whispered. "Did I come to thank you, only to be insulted?" She used her wrapper to wipe her tears and tried to cross the road, but her hands kept shaking. Her legs became weak. A loud truck horn blew. The tires made a loud screeching sound, and everywhere went quiet. She was gone. The next day, her story spread everywhere like wildfire. Old widow shamed in church dies few hours later. God's house or fashion show? Rich man's priest rejects poor widow's gift. Some Christians cried, others made jokes. Some people stopped going to church. Unbelievers finally had something to say. "That's why I don't go to church." All of them are hypocrites. But Father Innocent didn't care. "God deserves the best," he said boldly in church, "and poor people should not sit in front." But he didn't know yet. His kingdom was falling apart. Father Innocent kept treating poor people badly. It had been like that since he became a priest. It was like he built a big wall between himself and the poor. He always said, "God deserves the best." But what he meant was he deserved the best. And if you can't give it, then stay far from him. One other Thanksgiving Sunday, a poor old woman, Mama Esther, was known in the area for her kindness and small shop. She sold dry fish and brought some to church that day as her Thanksgiving gift. It wasn't plenty, but it was all she had. When she reached the front, holding the fish with care, Father Innocent looked at her from the corner of his eye. His face changed into one of disgust. He stopped the service for a while and pointed at her. "Mama Esther," he said with a fake smile, Are you here to feed God fish or feed us? He pointed at the crowd, and people started laughing. Did you think this was a fish market? Carry your dry fish and go back to your small corner. This is not the place for small gifts. The church laughed even louder. Mama Esther stood still, feeling ashamed and heavy. Her hands shook as she held the fish close to her chest. But she had no choice but to go and sit down, feeling very embarrassed. From that day, she decided she won't go to church again. She felt like she didn't belong in a place made for worship. That shame followed her for many weeks. It was time for offering, and people stood up to give. A poor man called. Kelvin, a mechanic, came to church with the small money he made that week. He quietly dropped a N100 note inside the offering bowl, hoping it could be his way to bless God. As he walked back, the priest saw him. "Look at this one," Father Innocent said loudly. And everyone in church turned to look. "Kelvin, a mechanic wants to give me N100. Do you think God wants this kind of money? Carry your change and leave. If you can't give more, you are wasting your time here." People giggled and Kelvin just stood there in shame. He worked hard for that money, but nobody cared. To Father Innocent, his gift meant nothing. Kelvin stood there for long, confused and hurt. His face burned from shame. He wanted to leave, but stayed because of God. Slowly, he walked back to his seat, head down, feeling small. It was Youth Sunday that week. A university student, Aimed, was invited to church by his friend. He wore a clean t-shirt and old jeans. He had saved for weeks to buy new shoes. But they were not expensive. He sat quietly at the back, wanting to know more about God. Father Innocent saw him quickly. He frowned and took the microphone. "Who allowed this boy to enter looking like a street beggar?" he asked, sounding very angry. "Is this how to come and worship God? Wearing jeans and t-shirts like you're going to the market? This is church, not a nightclub." He then pointed at Aimed, who tried to hide. "Don't sit in front. Please, go to the back. You're disturbing people. Go and dress well before you come to give God respect." Aimed stayed still, heartbroken. But he didn't know what to do. He had never felt that embarrassed before. It was seed sowing time in the church again. A single mother named Lucy, who just left the hospital after giving birth in pain, came to church with her baby boy. Lucy barely had food money, not to talk of offering. But she managed to give N200 with a hopeful heart. Father Innocent collected it and paused. He stared at the note like he was thinking deeply. "Look at this," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "A woman with a baby brings knee. 200. God did not beg for crumbs. This is not what he wants." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. She dropped her shoulders as she walked back, completely broken. Some elders and kind church members tried to talk to Father Innocent about his actions. They saw the pain he was causing, but were scared to speak. Still, a few brave ones found courage to talk to him. Elder Stephen, a long-time church member, met Father Innocent one afternoon after service. His face was serious but kind. "Father Innocent," he said, "I've been here for more than 30 years, and I've watched you. You've done good things, but the way you treat the poor is wrong. You shame them and insult them in front of everyone." Father Innocent's face became hard. "What are you saying, Elder?" he asked, brushing it off. "I'm teaching them to respect God. If they want to give, they should give their best. You are hurting people with your words." Elder Stephen said calmly, "We don't chase the poor away. We don't disgrace them. God doesn't judge us by how much we give or how we dress. You're breaking the spirit of the church," Father Innocent hissed. "I'm doing what's best for this place. If you don't agree, Maybe you should leave. The elder didn't reply, just walked away shaking his head. I tried. 2 weeks later, another member, Sister Margaret, a kind woman with a soft voice, wanted to speak with him. She had always respected him, but she felt uneasy. "Father Innocent," she said gently, "I've seen how you talk to some people, especially the ones who don't have much. I know you mean well, but it's getting too much. People are leaving because they feel unwanted." Father Innocent turned, eyes hard. "What are you saying, sister? Are you trying to say I'm wrong for wanting God's house to look good?" "I'm not saying that," Sister Margaret replied. "But we should not use God's house to shame others. The poor matter to God, too. They need love, not insults." Father Innocent's face turned red. "If you want to pamper them, start your own church. But this is my church, and I'll do what's right for it." Sister Margaret sighed and left, knowing he won't change. She watched as more people left the church quietly, the place becoming full of pride and greed. Rain fell gently on the glass windows of a black SUV, making the view outside blurry like a painting. Inside the car, it was very quiet. The only sound was a slow, beeping machine connected to the man lying at the back. Chief Sunday Bennard, a billionaire and oil boss. Saturday looking blankly at the papers in his hands. The doctor's words echoed in his head like loud bells. "Stage 4 cancer, sir. It's too late." He had heard such words before, in films, on television, but now it was real. His time was running out. Maybe months, or just weeks. No wife, no children. Everyone around him just wanted his money. His name, his influence. But nobody truly cared about his heart. "What is left?" he whispered as rain tapped on the window. Beside him sat Joshua, his quiet and wise assistant. "Sir, maybe you can use your last days to do something that matters, something that will live after you're gone." Chief Sunday nodded slowly. "Yes, I want to give back to God and people, not another house or yacht, something that will last forever." Joshua cleared his throat. "We've checked for good churches and orphanages, places that need help. Forget those. Big churches," the chief said quickly. "I want to find a place that really serves God. A place that helps the poor, not praises the proud. A place that heals people, not shames them." Joshua paused a bit. "There's one popular church in town," he said carefully. "Big building, richest in town, but people talk about the priest." "Let's go there," the chief said at once. "Today. But sir, I want to see for myself. No special seat. No greeting. I'll wear a disguise. Let's see if they welcome strangers. And the poor, too." Back at the church, Reverend Father Innocent stood proudly at the altar. He wore a robe with shiny gold crosses and tiny diamonds on it. He didn't preach about sin or heaven, but about class and giving. "God loves a cheerful giver," he said, "and the more you give, the more blessings you get. Who among you can sow a seed of N5 million today?" The church clapped and cheered. Ushers walked around with velvet offering bags. The choir sang songs about riches and success. Wealth was no longer just testimony. It had become the message. Just then, the church doors opened slowly, and everyone looked. A man walked in slowly, leaning on a cane. His clothes were dirty and old. His sandals were worn out. He wore an old cap, but his eyes were sharp and alert. It was Chief Sunday in disguise. He quietly sat on a bench far from the crowd. Joshua followed behind him, acting like a poor helper. My lovely viewers, before we go on, if you're enjoying this story, please show us some love. Click the like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Yes, you. Because every like, every comment, and every subscription helps us keep the story going. Now, let's go back to the story. Father Innocent looked at them and immediately frowned. He bent toward an usher and whispered, "Who allowed those poor people to enter here?" "They just walked in, sir," the usher said nervously. "Then go and walk them out. This is not a homeless shelter. This is God's house, not a dumping ground." The usher wasn't sure what to do, but Father Innocent shouted, "You, old man, with the cane!" he yelled. The music stopped playing. Everyone turned around. "Did you miss your way? The shelter for beggars is down the road." The disguised rich man didn't say anything. "You must be mad to walk in like that," Father Innocent continued. "Do you want to bring curses into God's house with your poverty?" People in the church laughed quietly. Someone even snapped a photo. Chief Sunday stood up, hands shaking. "I thought this was a place for the broken," he said softly. "But it looks like only the rich are welcome to worship here." Father Innocent scoffed. "God deserves respect, not pity stories. Please leave before you disgrace the altar." The old man turned around and walked out slowly. Outside, he leaned on his cane and looked at the sky. "So, it's true," he said to Joshua. "This church is not about God, just about gold." 3 weeks later, the story went viral on social media. Billionaire Chief Sunday gives all his wealth to orphanage. After church insults, him reveals he visited churches in disguise. "God lives with the humble, not the proud," he said before dying. The article had pictures, one of a happy orphanage getting a check, one of the priest shouting at the disguised Sunday inside the church. Church members were shocked. That was him? Daddy Go chased away a billionaire. He could have changed this church forever. The priest panicked. He tried to defend himself during the next service. "Don't be fooled," he shouted from the altar. "The devil can pretend to be an angel. That man was not from God." But this time, the people didn't clap. They were silent and ashamed. A group of elders met him after church. "Enough is enough," one of them said. "You've turned God's house into a showground." Another one added, "You embarrassed a widow until she died. You disgraced a sick billionaire who came to give. What other wicked things have you done secretly?" Soon, people started a petition, then a protest. Then the church board met. Within 1 month, Father Innocent lost his title and was removed from the church. The grand cathedral became empty, a cold reminder of pride and how greed destroyed a dream. The once lively church that echoed with music and praise now stood quiet and strange. Dust started to gather on the altar. The golden offering bowls were untouched. The car park, once full of big cars, now looked like a ghost town. Even the wind blowing around the compound felt like it was crying. Father Innocent sat alone in his fancy house, a mansion behind the church, built with offerings. His white robe was now rumpled, his once bright skin pale with stress. He hadn't slept well since the scandal broke, but what hurt him the most wasn't the shame or news. It was the silence. Nobody came to visit him, not even the rich people he used to praise. His phone stopped ringing. The members who used to kneel before him now avoided him. He had become a disgrace. He stared at an old photo of himself in priestly robes, smiling happily on the day he was made a priest. His dream felt clean back then, or so he thought. He remembered how the old priest laid hands on him and said, "Serve God with a pure heart." But he didn't listen. Meanwhile, in the community, something was different that Sunday. For the first time in many years, the church opened without a priest. A humble assistant pastor, Brother William, was asked to lead. He didn't speak big grammar. He wasn't rich, but his eyes showed kindness. About 30 people showed up. mostly those who had left before, when the church became a place for pride. They included tailors, traders, drivers, and cleaners. Some stayed quietly at the back, unsure. Others waited near the door. Brother William stood at the altar and cleared his throat. "I know many of you are hurting," he said. "You were insulted. You were ignored. You were told your clothes, car, or gifts were not good enough for God." He paused for a moment and continued. "But God never asked for gold. He wants a humble heart, a broken spirit, and a willing soul." One by one, people started to cry, not loud, just quiet tears. The widow's story touched them deeply. Her photo had gone viral standing at the altar with her dry yams, smiling. That smile haunted many, a smile hiding pain. A smile that was mocked and silenced. A woman in her 40s raised her hand. "I was once told not to sing in the choir because my voice wasn't sweet enough," she said, voice shaking. "I stopped going to church for years." A man stood up. "I was a cleaner, and one Sunday I came in my work clothes. The priest told ushers to push me to the back. That day, I lost faith in the church." More people shared their pain. Stories of those hurt, judged, and broken by the very church that was supposed to be a place of healing, but things were changing. They came back, not for the fallen man, but for the God who never left. Late at night, Innocent walked into the church alone. His steps were slow, his heart heavy. He stood before the empty altar and fell on his knees. "God," he whispered, "I don't even know where to start. I thought I was serving you, but I was serving myself," he cried. Not fake tears, but real ones that come from deep pain. "I used your name to fill my belly. I used your church to build my image. I mocked your children. I shamed your house. How can you even look at me?" The silence was loud, but inside, something shifted. Not a voice, but an awareness, like a mirror showing him his true self. He remembered Mama Edith's facial smile, her kindness. He had mocked her. He called her a witch. He drove her to her death. His voice shook as he said her name. "I'm sorry, Mama Edith." The next Sunday, something strange happened. Father Innocent came to church wearing simple clothes. He didn't go to the altar. He sat at the back alone. People gasped and whispered. Brother William saw him, paused, and said, "We are all sinners who need grace. Let him stay." After service, Innocent walked to the altar and asked for the mic. The place went silent. He stood there shaking. "I don't expect your forgiveness," he said. "I don't deserve it. But I must confess." And he did. He confessed everything. The bribes, the pride, the lies, the greed, how he insulted the widow, the billionaire, the poor. He didn't make excuses. He didn't act holy. He poured everything out. People cried again, not from pain, but relief. Healing had started. An old man walked up and placed a hand on his shoulder. "God gives grace to the humble," he said gently. Others came too, one by one, and surrounded Innocent, not to praise him, but to pray for him. 6 months later, the church once called the rich man's church looked very different. Not because the building changed. The walls were still the same, the marble floors were still shining, and the golden pulpit still stood. But the spirit inside had changed. The velvet ropes that once divided the rich from the poor were gone. The special chairs for rich families were removed. No more shouting about who gave the biggest offering. No more special treatments. No more proud displays before God. Now, ushers smiled at everyone the same way. Children from poor homes ran around happily through the church. And, for the first time in years, strangers didn't feel left out. They felt like they belonged. At the entrance of the church, where big posters used to advertise Harvest Gala and Millionaire Seed Night, now stood a wooden board. Beautifully carved into it were the words, "God looks at the heart, not the clothes." 1 Samuel 16-7. Inside the church, close to the altar, there was a big framed photo. It showed a smiling old widow holding 2 small yams in her hands. Below the photo, the words were written, "In memory of Mama Edith, the woman who reminded us what real worship looks like." Father Innocent was no longer a priest, not officially. After he was removed, the church leadership took away his title, and rightly so. But he didn't leave the town. He stayed behind, serving quietly. He joined the church janitors, cleaning the same church where he once walked in fancy robes. He scrubbed toilets, swept the compound, and arranged chairs every Sunday before the new pastor came. At first, people were surprised. Some thought he was pretending, others avoided him. But, as time passed, his actions spoke louder than words. Innocent had truly changed. He no longer wanted to be noticed or heard. He no longer looked down on the poor. He now spent most of his time helping the needy, visiting sick church members, and using his small savings to pay school fees for children in the area. He was often seen sitting quietly at the back of the church, a Bible in his hands, his head always bowed. Not in shame, but in respect. One evening, the church received a letter addressed to God's people. It was from Joshua, the young secretary of Chief Sunday, the one who was with him that day in church. It read, "Before Chief Sunday died, he told me to write this on his behalf. He forgave the priest. He understood what pain and ambition can do to someone's heart if left unchecked. He chose not to judge, but to inspire others. He asked me to tell the church this: be the kind of place that welcomes the stranger, the broken, the poor, and also the rich, because God sees beyond our masks. I came to give, but I found something deeper than charity. I found the truth, and that truth is what we must never lose again." 1 year later, it was Thanksgiving Sunday again. But this time, no spotlights, no golden chairs,